Hi everyone. Today it seemed right to spend a little time talking about the Four of Knives, or the Four of Swords. This is the Tarot of Vampires deck, and as many of you know, it's my favorite tarot deck. And the image in this one is different than what you'll typically see in most traditional Rider-Waite-Smith style decks for the Four of Knives. And I appreciate that as someone who reads because, anytime we can get a new perspective on a card or a new understanding of a card, it makes us better readers if we happen to be readers by profession, but also a better reader even if we just read for ourselves. So Four of Knives is a card that for a long time I had a very, very, very specific meaning for this card when it shows up. However, over the last few weeks, the meaning with this card has shifted a little bit as I've had it come up for me a few times. And so kind of looking at it a slightly different layer than I typically do with this card, and just wanting to share a little bit about that with all of you in case you're finding that, you're drawing this card a lot or trying to understand when it shows up what it means for you. So traditionally, traditional Rider-Waite-Smith meaning, the Four of Knives is talking about a need for rest, a need for recuperation, and as a reader, personally for me, when I draw this card for other people, it really is talking about, in my experience when I read for others with it, very much about if you don't stop and take a break, the universe is going to arrange a break for you, and it's probably going to be way more painful than if you took a couple days off. Even if it's costing you money to do that, it's going to cost you a lot more to not take the time off. So it typically has meant, and like in all of my own journals and notebooks over the years, it's like take a rest or the universe is going to arrange a nice little break for you. So typically that's what this card means, and I tend to view it a little bit with maybe not trepidation, but when it shows up, I'm like, oh boy, I'm not listening to a message that the universe is giving me, or that, deity is giving me, or my higher self is giving me. So it is a little bit of like a warning or a wake-up call, but it's not as intense as like Five of Skulls. It's more just a loving little reminder from the universe to kind of get your shit together. So this has been like a basic meaning that I've had with this card, but as I've been working with this card over the last few weeks, more and more it's come up that it's really about finding sanctuary, but even more than that, withdrawing into kind of a meditative place to have an understanding of why you are where you are, and what you're ready to release or look at or change, look at in a different way or change in your life. And this has been a newer way of me exploring this card because, like I said, typically I go right into the take a rest, I'm not resting enough, or my client isn't resting enough, there's too much work, not enough unplugging, and not enough restoring energetically. So the marriage of that with this idea of sanctuary and of gaining clarity through our spiritual connection adds another layer to this card. Now, this might have been something that you've been working with the Four of Knives for a long time, and Ian Daniels talks about this in the Phantasmagoria guidebook as well. So it's not like this is like some new meaning to look at with this. But for me, it's a new way of interacting with this card, because typically the card that I would devote a lot of attention to that with is the Four of Scepters, or Four of Wands. And in Tarot of Vampires, the Four of Scepters is very much about sacred space, ritual, meditation, coming into that energy. But this four now, I'm looking at it in a new way, this Four of Knives, and interacting with it that way. So it's very much about looking at what sanctuary is to you. And this is, so this requires a looking at what sanctuary is for you personally. What does it mean? What is sacred space? And when you go into sanctuary, how does that feel? How do you experience it? And where can you feel that you've unplugged from the source of stress, overworking, exhaustion, anxiety, and plug into, an experience of source, higher self, connection to the universe, and an understanding of the bigger picture of your personal experience. So sanctuary becomes this really awesome word to explore and to sit with and to not ignore, but instead look at it as a call to trust the universe and to go a little bit deeper on our personal path. So in a lot of ways, it's exciting, even though it might feel, when you think about exhaustion and what that feels like, which is what the Four of Knives is also talking about, stepping into that sanctuary, it might really not feel like the most awesome experience. And yet, as you are getting into sanctuary, as you're stepping into sanctuary, and yet there is a coming home, a being held, a being loved and understood in sanctuary that's very healing for the soul. And very also, I think, calming, restoring. And so finding that peace, that quiet space to understand how you have gotten to where you are currently, whether that's you're viewing it as a positive experience, a negative experience, or none of those things. But instead, understanding it, finding that understanding through the peace, through the quiet, through the connection with source, higher self, and away from a sense of scarcity or fear, is a pretty big deal. And so this card, even though it is talking about rest and seems very straightforward, there are still layers to unpack with this card as well in tarot, which is, of course, super exciting. And those of us who love tarot and read with tarot, I'm sorry guys, this curl is like driving me a little bit nuts there. I can't help it. For those of us who read with tarot and who use tarot as a sacred tool to walk through our lives, unpacking those deeper layers as the years go by, as time goes by, is something that's really very, very exciting. So it's thrilling to see, oh, there's another piece here that I haven't really looked at with this card. And I have found that with cards that I kind of have a meaning for right away, that I had an understanding of very, very quickly in my work with tarot, I can tend to get very narrow in my understanding of them and really like zero in on, okay, this is what this card always means. And so coming back to refreshing, like kind of hitting the refresh button on that card, has been really exciting for me over the last few weeks and has had a really powerful message. So I would encourage you to look at this aspect of sanctuary and of quiet calm in order to understand and gain some clarity about how you've gotten where you are. And I think that the Four of Knives is very supportive of that process as an archetypal energy, as an energy, and a card for us in our journey with tarot. So I hope you found that helpful. I know a lot of you have asked about that. Not asked about that, but asked me to share more of, individual card meanings, how I've experienced them, and I've really been enjoying making these videos. So I hope you've enjoyed talking a little bit about this one. And I am, as always, sending you guys much love and many blessings. And I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.